Hello, everyone on Patreon. Thank you so much for voting this month on a Hitchcock Truffaut chapter review. The winner this month is Stage Fright, which was released in 1950. This, of course, was directed by Alfred Hitchcock. It was written by Whitfield Cook, Alma Reville, and Selwyn Jepson. It starred Marlene Dietrich, Jane Wyman, and Richard Todd. For those of you who have not seen it, the plot, according to IMDb, is a struggling actress tries to help a friend prove his innocence after he's accused of murdering the husband of a high society entertainer. I enjoyed this film. I reviewed it about a year and a half ago, and my guest actually had a lot of enthusiasm for it as well, because it has certain themes and characters that you would see in a lot of Hitchcock's films, even in the Hitchcock Presents TV show, which was, falling in love for someone who you think is a certain way, and then finding out that that person is not what you think at all, which we certainly see in this film. But I was a little surprised. I mean, Hitchcock didn't really care for it. He said that it was based on the book. It was based on a book. It was a new book. So when this came out, a lot of people were saying that it would be perfect for a Hitchcock to adapt, and he believed it. And he said, and like an idiot, I believe them, was his quote. And then I was a little surprised because Truffaut says, he mentions here, he says, you did Stage Fright, and it says it added little or nothing to your prestige. It's simply another one of those little British crime movies in the Agatha Christie tradition. But besides, you claim you disapprove of whodunits. So, and then Hitchcock goes on to say, which I agree, which is true. He says, you wonder why I chose that particular story? Well, the book had just come out, and several of the reviewers had mentioned that it might make a good Hitchcock picture, which I mentioned. But he says here, what specifically appealed to me was the idea that the girl who dreams of becoming an actress will be led by circumstances to play a real-life role by posing as someone else in order to smoke out a criminal. So it has that irony to it, and cleverness, and interesting psychological aspects to it. And then, so I was surprised that Truffaut only really saw it as a whodunit, because it does have some interesting psychological aspects to it within. I mean, again, it is a plot-heavy, entertaining film. I'm not saying it's psychologically deep or complex. I wouldn't consider it a great film, but it's got some interesting elements, and this was another one. He said here, Hitchcock says, I did one thing in that picture that I never should have done. I put in a flashback that was a lie. And then Truffaut says, yes, and the French critics were particularly critical of that. And Hitchcock goes on to say, strangely enough, in movies, people never object if a man is shown telling a lie. And it's also acceptable when a character tells a story about the past, but for the flashback, to show it as if it were taking place in the present. So why is it that we can't tell a lie through a flashback? And then Truffaut says, in this picture, it isn't as simple as that. So I'd have to agree with Hitchcock, because it's interesting that he sort of contradicts what he says there, because he goes, well, what's wrong with doing it? But then he says he shouldn't have done it. So I guess he wasn't satisfied with the end result. Maybe he thought the idea sounded better than the actual execution of it. But I thought that was interesting because, yeah, you do see off the top, Marlene Dietrich goes to this man who she's having an affair with, and he's in love with her, and she had just killed her husband, and tells him about it. So the whole time we think that she is the one who did it, and everyone believes that it's this guy that Jane Wyman is friends with, who it's clearly, I mean, my impression was clearly she was actually really in love with him and trying to save it. And what you find in the end is that she talked this guy into doing it, which he confesses at the end. So again, the element of, she thought this guy was just really good guy that she loved, and in the end, he actually is a killer. So again, we think something about someone, we think they're a certain way, and then we find out they're not, and that's a really universal aspect to many relationships. And so I found that appealing as well. So I thought it was interesting that they set it up that way. That he shows a flashback that was a lie, which is revealed later. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I can't even think of many films that have done that. So it's pretty interesting. So why they had such a problem with it, I don't know. But it just seems that they wrote this film off. And then he says here at the end, Hitchcock, I became aware. Why? Oh, yeah, here it is. Because Truffaut talks about the fact that no one is actually really in danger, and because the villain is actually so scared, and this young man is actually kills this guy because this woman talked him into it, and he's terribly afraid the whole film, and so it didn't have a great villain in like his other films do, and so that was a weakness that Hitchcock also agreed with. He says, the great weakness of the picture is that it breaks an unwritten law. The more successful the villain, the more successful the picture. That's a cardinal rule. And in this picture, the villain was a flop. And then Truffaut says, the better the villain, the better the picture. So, but, to me, I thought that was interesting. Why does... obviously he's had great villains, which are really compelling. And I'm not saying this film is better than, the likes of the villains in, films like Notorious, or like they mentioned here, Notorious, Shadow of a Doubt, Strangers on a Train, that all had great villains with Claude Rains, Joseph Cotten, and Robert Walker. That's true. So yeah, but even Jane Wyman in the end was in danger because the guy was going to kill her so that he can say that he was going to go to court and say that he was insane. So it was a way to save himself. So she was in danger. But yeah, it's true. Throughout the film, there wasn't any real danger involved because the guy was so scared. But to me, that it's like a genre bender in a sense. It's sort of twisting our expectations and making it something a little more human. Not that villains aren't human as well, but human in the sense that these people are all ordinary. Which you don't really see a lot. So the combination of like the scared villains and the flashbacks that are a lie and the psychological aspects, I thought it was interesting. I'm not sure why they just have these certain rules, I suppose, or certain things that they felt were compelling in his other films that were not in this film. But to me, I thought that was quite entertaining and quite interesting. There's some interesting trivia here where he talks about the problems he had with Jane Wyman was because she had to wear this makeup when she was pretending to be somebody else. And she felt that she looked so unattractive beside Marlene Dietrich, who looked so glamorous. And so every day she was trying to make herself look better and look a little more glamorous. I suppose she felt competitive with Dietrich. I know in Dietrich's memoir, she did not speak highly of Jane Wyman as well. So I thought she was good in it. But that's a shame that she did that she, tried to make herself look better and when she's meant to be in a disguise. But it didn't really throw me. I could see what she was doing. She certainly looked a lot different in the disguise. So it's a shame. It's a short chapter, like I've said. Often the shorter the chapter, that likely means both of them didn't have much enthusiasm for it. Usually that's the case unless it was just an editing thing where, they could only say so much in a whole book. Hitchcock made so many movies. But yeah, to me, that's a disappointing take. I know what they're saying, but I think those unexpected tropes that we have here and these more human elements, more ordinary elements of the people for all the things I've described, I thought that was pretty interesting. Do I think it's better than the other films they mentioned? No, but I think it's a good film. It's really not talked about very much. And so I'm glad I reviewed it. If you haven't seen my review, I will leave it in the description box below where you can check it out. But let me know what you think. Do you agree with Hitchcock and Truffaut on their take on this film? Do you agree with some things they said or not so much on others? I'd be very curious to hear what you think. But to me, their views were generally disappointing. But it is what it is. But I think it's a good film, so if you haven't seen it, go check it out. Thank you so much for voting this month. I hope that you've enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one.